Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is an award-winning singer-songwriter whose iconic voice and sound have been captivating audiences for 30 years. He burst on the music scene in 1991 with his international multi-platinum smash hits, I Wonder Why, You're All That Matters to Me, and Never Saw a Miracle. Since then, he's released 13 highly acclaimed albums, including Baby Plays Around, Secret Heart, Lost in Dreams, and my personal favorite, You Inspire Me. You also heard him on the soundtrack to the movie The Bodyguard, which contained his version of What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding. And if you watch the wildly popular TV show Sons of Anarchy, you've heard two of his songs, This Life, which got an Emmy nomination, and John the Revelator. By infusing his own brand of rock and soul into his performances, he has single-handedly reinvented and revitalized contemporary jazz music and the Great American Songbook. His brand new album, entitled This Life, will be released on February 25th, and the first single from that album, called Keep Me From the Cold, is now available for streaming. I'm delighted to welcome Curtis Stigers to our show. Curtis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Curtis, I read that as a young man, when you first moved to New York from Idaho, you intended to become a rock musician and you were a drummer in a punk rock band. So how did you end up gravitating more towards jazz and blues?
Well, I grew up loving all kinds of music. When I was a kid, AM radio played everything. You know, they played soul music, they played Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin and Gladys Knight. And they also played Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. They also played Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. And every now and then you'd hear a little jazz, a little country music. It was broad tastes, or it was for broad tastes. And so I learned about a lot of different types of music, and I fell in love with music generally, and great songs in particular. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, I played drums in a punk rock band. I also played saxophone, and that drew me to jazz. I studied jazz in school, playing with the big band and singing with the choir. That was all really important to me. I went to college on a jazz scholarship. So when it came time to sort of change directions, after my pop success, I really wanted to make jazz records. And so that's what I've done since 2000. I had the first decade of my recording career as a pop singer, and then jazz sort of took over. Although my pop records, as you know, or my jazz records, as you know, have a lot of pop music in them, don't they?
Yeah, they sure do. Now, is it true that your song Swingin Down at 10th and Main is a tribute to Gene Harris?
It is indeed. Gene Harris, the legendary jazz pianist, moved to Boise in the late 70s to basically he retired. He didn't like where jazz was going. And so he retired for a while anyway. He eventually was brought back out on the road by Ray Brown and had a sort of a second career. But he was this legendary piano player who did a five nights a week gig at the Idanha Hotel, the corner of 10th Street and Main Street. And I started going in and to his jam session every Tuesday night when I was about 15 years old. I learned how to play jazz, at least partly, while playing with one of the greatest jazz pianists in the world. And we didn't realize, I mean, he was one of the few African-Americans in Boise. Boise is a very white bread place. So he was different because he was this beautiful, strapping black man who played the heck out of the piano. He was just, he was such an inspiration, so kind, so warm, so supportive. And years later, after my pop success, I was lucky enough to sing on a couple of his records. So it was sort of like coming full circle.
Swingin Down at 10th and Main is on the Secret Heart album, and you've re-recorded the song on your new album, This Life. So it's clear how important that song is to you.
It is. This album, This Life, is a look back at my years in the record business and before even. And I felt like, for a couple of reasons, this song should be on it. One, because I really wanted to represent my relationship with Gene on this record. He was such a huge part of my life as a musician, and also because we play it differently now than we recorded it originally. My band and I have added parts to it, and we play it a little faster. We play it with a little bit more oomph, if you will. So I wanted this new live version of the song, much like I also wanted the new live version of my hits and the Sons of Anarchy theme, etc. on this record. I really wanted this new version.
You were discovered by the legendary producer Clive Davis, who heard you singing in a restaurant, and you signed with Arista Records for your first two albums. I know you didn't stay with Arista that long, but do you have some memories of working with Clive Davis that you can share with us?
Well, Clive is a bigger than life character. I remember the first time I went in to meet with Clive in his office. You walk in, and first of all, it's freezing. He kept his office at sub-zero temperatures. It was incredibly cold. And you walk in, and there he is sitting at this massive glass desk, and behind him there are photos of him with Miles Davis and Janis Joplin and Whitney Houston and Bruce Springsteen, et cetera, et cetera. And I was talking to a lot of different labels at that time. There was kind of a feeding frenzy for me because I had made some sort of impact in New York. And so I had a choice of a lot of different labels. But when you walk in and you see that, it's sort of hard to walk away from it. It was sort of like, well, I guess this is why I came to New York. This is why I'm here.
Well, Curtis, what I really love about your music is that you refuse to be categorized into one genre. You're one of the very few artists out there who perform such a wide variety of musical styles. You've recorded songs written by everyone from Gershwin, Lennon and McCartney, Bob Dylan, Joe Jackson, Merle Haggard. How did you become so proficient and comfortable singing so many different genres of music?
You know, I just love songs. It never occurred to me to just love one type of music. I've always been into everything from classical music to jazz, from hard rock to punk rock to soul to folk. I really love a singer who tells a story with a song. That is the thing for me. It always has been, although as I get older, I pay more attention to that rule. You know, when I was a kid, you listen to my first record, and that kid was really trying to prove that he was a great soul singer. And so at times I was screaming my head off, and, you know, that's cool. But I probably could have whispered a little bit more. I whisper a lot more now that I'm a more mature individual. I still scream my head off occasionally, and I don't mind showing off the fact that I have a voice. But the story of the song is the important thing, no matter where it comes from. And I find great songs to record as jazz tunes, on country records, on singer-songwriter records, on blues records, on soul records, on straight-ahead pop records. It doesn't just have to come from the Great American Songbook, the old one anyway. I think there's a new Great American Songbook and a Great British Songbook as well. You know, a lot of the writers that I cover these days are British, like Nick Lowe, for instance, who wrote "What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding," the song I sang for the Bodyguard soundtrack, and now have re-recorded for this record.
You know what I see as the difference between your early material and your more recent stuff?
Tell me.
When you first started out, we could see that you were performing. In your recent albums in the last decade, I feel that you're singing just to me.
Yeah, that's good. You should be my publicist, actually. I think if you've got if you've got some time, that's perfect. Because I mean, I was given that piece of advice actually some years ago, 11 years ago or so. And I suppose in the last 20 years, I've focused on that kind of singing, but someone really put it in that perspective. A guy called Larry Klein, great record producer. He produced my album, Let's Go Out Tonight. Larry is famous for having produced a lot of Joni Mitchell records. In fact, he was Joni Mitchell's husband for quite a long time. Wonderful musician, great producer. And one day, as I was heading into the booth to sing a song, he said, "Sing this song like you're singing it to one person, not to everybody, just to one person." And my head exploded. It was, of course, that's exactly what one should do. You should sing to one person. Everyone will get it, but it just makes a song so much more intimate and so much more personal. And so, yeah, I try to do that. Sometimes, you sing it to them loudly, but often the whisper works as well or better when you're telling a story to one person.
Yeah, because you create an emotional connection. Now, you've worked on stage with some of the biggest names in the music world, including Elton John, Eric Clapton, Prince, Rod Stewart, Joe Cocker, just to name a few. Yeah. Curtis, what's it like to collaborate with one of your own musical heroes?
Well, the first The first person that I had that experience with really was Elton John. I met Elton the summer of '92. I had a hit album out. I had a couple of hit singles, and I opened for Elton John, Eric Clapton, and Bonnie Raitt at Wembley Stadium in London in front of 88,000 people. And before that first show, I got an invitation to go say hello to Elton backstage, and I went to his, I would call it a dressing room, but it was more of a dressing palace, as you might imagine, with Elton. And I knocked on the door opened, and there is my childhood hero. I mean, I had posters of Elton John on my wall when I was a kid. I knew every word to every album he recorded in the '70s. It was just, he was my first musical hero, and he was lovely. He's a kind man. He's always looked out for me. I see him now and then. You know, I see him once every 10 years or something, 7 or 8 years. But when I do, it's always with warmth that he greets me. You know, the last time I saw him, he played here in my hometown, Boise, Idaho, where I had moved back to. And he, not only was I crying on the side of the stage watching this, just being in my hometown where I used to stand in my basement and sing his songs with headphones on, there he was just putting on this incredible show. But near the end of the show, he dedicated the song Daniel to me. And I mean, that was it. I was just a mess. It was so lovely. He's a really great guy and an amazing musician. He's someone who has always drawn from a lot of different types of music. He's a pop singer, but he's also a soul singer, and he was a blues singer and a great instrumentalist, great piano player, and a great songwriter. So I couldn't say more wonderful things about Elton. There are some people you meet that are a little less lovely, but I don't name any names. But for the most part, I've been really lucky. Bonnie Raitt is another one who's just adorable. One of the coolest, nicest people, and to get to play saxophone and sing with Bonnie Raitt is astounding. It's just such a big deal for me.
Oh, I can imagine. Is there anyone you haven't worked with yet that you'd like to?
Wow. Well, there are a zillion of them. You know, I really love Diana Krall. I think she approaches singing the way I do. She sings very intimately. She can sing. She could belt if she wanted to, but I love that she's a player and a singer. I think our voices would sound nice together. So, you know, if Diana, if you're out there listening, let's do a duet. Come on.
Well, I actually have an idea. I would love to see you record a duets album and do songs with some of the iconic female voices like Cher, Lady Gaga, Streisand, Diana Krall. If I were your publicist, I'd be pushing you in that direction.
You would also need to be my banker as well, because that's such a great idea. But getting Barbra Streisand on this would probably cost a few bucks. So we've got to come up with a fundraising plan. That's our next step. We have to figure out how to do that, because that sounds great. Can you imagine getting to sing with Barbra or Cher? I mean, come on, Cher. It'd be fantastic.
I think they would be the lucky ones to get you singing with them.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Now, Curtis, you've worked with one of my heroes, Carole King. You co-wrote Then I Had This Dream with her, and you sang Home Again on the Carole King tribute album called Tapestry Revisited. I have to tell you, Curtis, that your rendition of that song is not only my favorite song on the album, but it's one of my all-time favorites of all your recordings, Home Again.
Man, that's so great. I don't, a lot of people don't know about that recording, and I'm really proud of it. I think, you know, that there's some good stuff on that record, and there's some stuff that's a little, you know, less, I don't know, committed to Carole, but I was just so in love with Carole as a songwriter, as an artist, and as a person. I eventually got to meet, you know, she's always had a place here in Idaho where I grew up and where I now live again. And so eventually, after doing that, I got to hang out with Carole, and I went to a ranch here in Idaho. I went into hot springs with Carole King. I was in my swimming trunks with Carole King. It was crazy. And then a couple of years later, we got together in her apartment in New York City. I always tell a joke, you know, at the beginning. I say, one day I found myself sitting in Carole King's living room writing a song, and then she came home and said, "Get the hell out of my apartment." But of course, that's just a joke. She knew I was there, and we were there together, and we wrote this song. I mean, it's you can hear the Carole King in it, but it's also, I mean, it's like this sort of bluesy New Orleans. It's about a completely imaginary bus trip from Natchez, Mississippi to New Orleans. So of course, because a nice Jewish girl from Brooklyn and a skinny white kid from Idaho get together and write a song about New Orleans. But I adore her. She's just wonderful. She actually sent a pair of baby socks to us when my daughter was born back in the early, well, my daughter was born in 2000, and I still have those socks. Ruby wore them until she couldn't wear them anymore, and now I just sort of keep them in a drawer. It's like Carole King gave us those socks.
Well, whose idea was it for you to sing Home Again? Because the combination of that song with your voice was absolute magic. It's by far the best song on the album. And to all of our viewers, if you don't have the Carole King tribute album, download Curtis Stigers' version of Home Again. You will love it.
I mean, honestly, my first request, and I was partly being silly, but I also thought it would be sort of interesting. My first request was Natural Woman, and they said someone else had it, but I'm sure they were like, no, you can't have a man sing Natural Woman. I just thought it would be sort of funny. But my second choice right after that was Home Again. It's such a great song. And I knew that, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know it. So I could really take liberties with it and make it my own. I had at that time kind of a hard-hitting rhythm and blues rock band that I toured with, and I knew with the addition of this electric slide guitar player Dave Tronzo that we could really do something special with it. Coincidentally, that your favorite album of mine, at least that you said earlier, You Inspire Me, I featured Dave Tronzo on electric slide guitar, the same guy who played on Home Again, in a sort of an unusual move. I wasn't sure how it would be accepted in the jazz community to have electric slide guitar, because it's not really it's not thought of as a jazz instrument, but it turned out to be a really successful record for me, particularly, for one of the reasons, because Tronzo plays so unusually and so beautifully. So you have it's interesting. You have a very finely tuned ear, sir.
Well, I know good music when I hear it. And can I tell you what my other big favorite song of yours is?
Yes, you certainly may.
Well, actually, it's a tie between I Fall in Love Too Easily from the You Inspire Me album and You'd Be So Nice to Come Home To from your Secret Heart album.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Yeah. That's me really digging in and singing straight ahead jazz. Although I Fall in Love Too Easily, that was one that if I remember correctly, it's been a long time. That was a 2003 album, but the band was just kind of playing a groove, and it's kind of spacey. It's not what you'd expect a jazz ballad to sound like. They were playing, it was a straight ahead jazz group, but they were playing kind of this spacey, funky feel. And then I just thought, hey, I'm going to sing this song. And I started to sing it, and they just went along with me. That was completely an improv. We didn't plan to do that song at all, but I've always loved it. And it just happened to be in a good key for me to sing it. And I began to sing it, and it ended up being, I mean, it's one of the longest songs I've ever put on record. It just goes on, and there's a really long sax solo and a long organ solo. But I'm glad you like that. That's one that doesn't, not many people talk about that because it is long. I mean, it's definitely an investment. You have to stick around for a while.
Yeah, but when you've come home from a hard day at work and you got a glass of wine and you're having a few friends over for some cheese and crackers and you put that album on, Curtis, create the ambiance that we all want to have. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's high praise indeed. I love being able to be played at a cocktail party or a dinner party. That's where you make your most of your fans, is when people say, what is this? I like this.
That's exactly what happens all the time.
Good. And you keep doing that. I'll become a million seller yet.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, in 2017, you released another one of my favorite albums, One More for the Road, which is your tribute to Frank Sinatra, recorded live in Copenhagen with the Danish Radio Big Band. Was that a dream come true for you to record all those Sinatra classics?
It was an accident. I mean, not an accident that I was singing them, but I hadn't really ever considered doing that, because as an artiste, as a serious artist, I was always thinking, I don't want to do somebody else's material. I love Frank Sinatra. I mean, I love especially Frank Sinatra in the 50s and through the 60s. That he was at his peak. I love those Capitol records and those early reprise records. They're just some of the greatest singing and storytelling ever. But I never imagined I would have a Sinatra record. However, I flew to Denmark. I was asked by the Danish radio big band, which is fabulous. I mean, an amazing group of musicians, completely funded by the Danish government. They have their own facility within the Danish radio complex. It's a massive complex with the concert hall and the TV and the radio and everything. And we rehearsed for a few days. And the idea was basically to do a tribute to Sinatra, but particularly regarding his album from the mid 60s. I think it came out in 66. Sinatra at the Sands, which is the live record that so many people know. It was his first live record that was ever released.
With Count Basie.
With Basie, with the incredible band, with Quincy Jones conducting. Quincy arranged a lot of the stuff, or at least rearranged it. He sort of took the Nelson Riddle stuff and the Billy May stuff and rearranged it for big band instead of for all the strings. And the idea that they came up with was, I'd come over, I would sing, they would play. There was actually a narrator who spoke in Danish. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I assume he was talking about Sinatra and the sort of how the record had been made. So we recorded that. I had a lot of fun. I drank some Danish beer, hung out with the Vikings, and I went home. And a couple of weeks later, they sent me the radio recording of it because it was put out on radio a couple of days later. They sent it to me, and I didn't even listen to it because I just thought, it was a night. I loved it. I tend to think about concerts as train travel. You get on a train, you take your trip, you get off, and the trip is done and it was wonderful, but you're on to the next adventure. But I eventually, maybe a month later, I thought, oh, there's that thing. It was in my hard drive, and I pushed the button play, and it sounded great. I was really pleased with it. And so I listened through the whole thing. I thought, well, that's nice. I'll send it to my manager. I sent it to my manager. He and his wife listened to it that night while making dinner. And he called me the next morning and said, it's incredible. We have that has to be a record. We have to put that out. I said, oh, well, okay. How? He sent it to the record company. They loved it. The problem is they didn't put it out until the year after Sinatra's 100th birthday. I wanted it. I thought, well, this is the perfect idea. Put it out for the 100th anniversary of his, the 100th anniversary of his birthday. But they were worried there were going to be too many Sinatra records that came out that year, which it turned out there wasn't. Record companies aren't right very often, unfortunately, but so they put it out later, and it is really one of my favorite records. And I have toured with that band every winter until COVID hit, and then I've been sitting at home for a couple of years, but I toured with them for the last 5 or 6 years. Every January we go out and we do a Sinatra show, and over the years we've added in a Sammy Davis tune and a Dean Martin tune and a Count Basie tune, that sort of a thing. So we build it over the years, and it's a riot. They are an astounding band. Anyway, I told a very long story after a short question, but I really am proud of that. I'm glad you like it.
Oh, I love it. And I can't wait to get to see you one day with that band. I sure hope you will tour with them again.
Come to Denmark next January. I'm sure I'll be playing at the big the DR Jazz, or it's an amazing concert hall where we recorded that, and we will be there, I'm sure, in January. So we'll stay in touch, and I'll let you know. I'll get you some backstage passes. They have very good Danish beer behind backstage.
Boy, I would love that. So Curtis, let's talk about the new album entitled This Life, which will be released on February 25th. You've taken some of your earlier songs and refashioned them with a distinct jazz sound. What inspired you to do that?
Well, it's the 30th anniversary of my first album. That was the main thing. 5 years earlier, I was thinking about, well, maybe I should do it for my 25th anniversary, but I was busy. That was sort of at the time when the Sinatra record came out. I had a whole different thing going. It didn't make sense to look back at that point. Before that, I haven't looked back. I've always changed. I've always continued to evolve, both in my live sound and on my records. But as I came close to this 30-year anniversary, I realized I wanted to make a record that showed how I have grown, that illustrated how my songs sound differently. They sound different on stage than they did 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago. They've evolved. My band and I have completely recreated I Wonder Why, You're All That Matters to Me, Never Saw a Miracle, even the Sons of Anarchy theme, which recorded for the TV show was a hard rock blues number. We do it more, well, it's still spooky, it's still dark, but it doesn't scream. It kind of whispers, as I was talking about earlier. And I wanted to make a record that not only celebrated 30 years on the road, 30 years in the recording studio, 30 years in show business. I also wanted to show where I've come, how far I've traveled, and how much I've evolved, and how much my songs have evolved. I'm 30 years older, so are my songs, and so are my fans.
Yeah, I love the maturity that comes out of the new versions. Now, the first single from the new album is Keep Me From the Cold, which you co-wrote with Glenn Ballard, and you originally recorded it on your second album entitled Time Was. Is Keep Me From the Cold one of your favorite songs that you've ever written?
I really do love it. We sort of thought, we had written I Wonder Why together a few years earlier, and it became a top 10 single all over the world. And so for that second record, we just wrote this. We didn't set out to write a hit single. We set out to write a beautiful love song, and we did. I really think it's a lovely, I'd love to just sit and play it on my guitar. It always brings the house down, whether I'm doing a house concert for a charity or whether I'm on the road with my band playing in a theater. But it didn't hit. My second record didn't come out until 4 years after my first record because of my disagreements with Clive Davis. We had a little battle for creative control, and it took a long time for us to agree on what my second record would be, or at least how it would sound. And by the time that album came out, pop stations that used to play my songs in 91, 92 were playing almost entirely alternative stuff, grunge, and they were playing Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alanis Morissette, which I loved. I mean, I listened to those stations, but they weren't going to play a pretty love song, a pretty love ballad. So it fell in the cracks, and I've played it with my band. We've sort of evolved it as well. It's probably the closest to the original, though. It hasn't changed all that much, except that it's more acoustic sounding and a little less overwrought, I guess. But I wanted this song to be on the record. It's one that we play all the time, and it gets another chance now. And so it was the first single that we released. We say singles, sort of in air quotes these days. You don't really buy a 45 of this single. It was put out on on the different platforms. And since then, we've also released the new version of You're All That Matters to Me, and just last week, I Wonder Why, the new version of I Wonder Why. So that I've got 3 singles out now, and then the album comes out on Friday, and the floodgates open. I'm on the road and touring and supporting the record and playing the songs. It'd be nice to get back out on the road.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you in concert again. I want to tell all our viewers that Curtis has a weekly live concert called Songs from My Kitchen, which people can listen to every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. All of the shows can be seen at curtisstigers.com. Curtis, what a terrific thing you're doing to entertain us all in our own homes. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's every bit as entertaining for me as it is for the people who watch my live stream. Songs from My Kitchen is what, I did it because I was sitting at home in my kitchen with my dogs, basically playing my guitar and making videos. This old dog taught himself some new tricks, and one of them was editing, shooting and editing video, because I had an album out. My previous record, Gentleman, came out right at the beginning of COVID. So I had to figure out some way to get the word out about it. So I made some videos for the songs on that record. I did some pandemic or quarantine duets with my pianist and friend Larry Goldings. He was in LA, I was here, so I would record my part and send it to him, and then he would record his part, and then I'd edit it together, the film, or vice versa. He would send me his part. And I tried Patreon, which is a website that you get people to sort of commit $5 a month or $10 a month to get different content, but too small of a number of people were allowed to see it. Only the people that paid. And I was making this stuff that I really enjoyed. I really wanted people to hear me sing these songs I hadn't ever really played on guitar and sung. So I got rid of Patreon and I just took it to the people. I do it on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. It's free. You just tune in any Wednesday. It's 1 p.m. Mountain Time, so 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, and then 8 and 9 in it's 1 p.m. my time. So, I'm there. I am playing my guitar. My dogs are running around. Sometimes they bark. Sometimes they're good little angels. You never know how they're going to be. They do tricks. I give them treats, so it's weird. It's definitely homemade, but people seem to like it. People seem to really appreciate just coming into my house and hanging out in my kitchen for an hour every Wednesday. And I just love it. I'm not stopping. Even though I'm going back out on the road, I'll have to take some Wednesdays off, of course. But when I come home, it's just part of my life now. Wednesday at 1, I play some songs for people all over the place. I mean, I have people from Hungary and Britain and France. People see this show all over the world. It's really nice. And I don't have to even leave the house.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of my week. And as you mentioned, I believe starting February 24th, you'll be touring in England, and starting in June, you'll be touring with Barry Manilow in the UK.
Yeah,
You've been touring a lot in Europe lately. When will you be touring again in North America?
I'm working on it. I'm pushing hard. I'm breathing down the neck of my agent and manager. They're working hard at it. It's really been tricky to get booked again in the States, well, anywhere really, because all of those gigs that got canceled during COVID have to be rescheduled to now. And so there just aren't availabilities in the clubs and theaters. So it's been harder and harder, but I'm doing some dates. I'm playing in Telluride, Colorado, at the end of April, and I'm doing a show here in Boise at my local record store at the Record Exchange. If you just check my website, more and more shows are coming up, and I really have been trying to play in the States more. I've made my living in Europe. I have to admit, in Europe and Southeast Asia, that's where I go to play big halls, and when I play in the States, usually it's for jazz festivals or in clubs, and that's cool. But I focused on the places where I could really make a living. But these days, I like the idea of playing closer to home. So I'll get back there. I'll get back there.
I'm very happy to hear it. Now, Curtis, I know you're too humble to mention this, but I want our viewers to know that you raise hundreds of thousands of dollars every year for the Interfaith-Sanctuary Homeless Shelter in your hometown of Boise, Idaho. Tell us about your work for that organization.
Well, it started 15 years ago. I had an idea when I first moved back from New York to sort of replicate this Christmas show that happened at the Bottom Line in New York, with a great old club that is now gone, sadly. My friend Glenn Burtnick used to have the Glenn Burtnick Xmas Extravaganza, and he would put all these different, it was basically a variety show, lots of different artists, mostly musicians, but some comedians. And I remember being on a show, one of these shows, where I sang a song, and then Patti Smith was on, and Styx, the band Styx, and then some, like a wedding singer from Queens, who just happened to do a really beautiful version of Oh Holy Night. And I just love the idea of having all these different people get together to raise money. In their case, it was for a food bank. But when I moved back to Boise, I wanted to do something like this. And I did a fundraiser for someone who had cancer, and the person who produced that show, Jody Peterson, we were speaking afterwards, and I said, "You did a really great job. You filled the hall. We made a lot of money. I have this idea for a Christmas show," and I told her about it, and Jody Peterson said, "Let's do it this Christmas, but I'm Jewish, so it's a holiday show." And I said, "Perfect." So it became the Extreme Holiday Extravaganza. And Jody and I raised a lot of money for Interfaith-Sanctuary Homeless Shelter. They're a great shelter. It's a low barrier shelter, which means it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter, if you've got mental issues, if you have substance issues, you're welcome. We'll get you a bed and a place to eat, and then we'll work on getting those other things fixed. And there's another big shelter in town that if you don't say that, you know, your Jesus Christ is your savior, they won't let you stay there. And or if you're gay, you have to say you're not gay to stay there. I think that's crazy. So this shelter, Interfaith Sanctuary, is supported by all the faiths, and it's really just about people being taken care of. I love that. Now, what's interesting is that as the years went by, well, Jody got divorced, and then a couple of years later, I got divorced, and I was heartbroken. And about a year after my divorce, I looked at Jody and I thought, hey, wait a minute, we're really good friends. We've known each other a long time, and you're cute. And now Jody and I are married. She is now Jody Peterson Stigers, and she's not just a fundraiser for the shelter. She's actually the executive director. She threw her heart and soul into the place and has expanded it. And there's now a treatment, for recovery. There's a recovery program. There's a mental health program. There's a work program. She's created some amazing things. So we've raised over $2 million for them, and she's raised a lot more than that without my help. But I just sing, and she does all the hard work. But thank you for asking. I'm sorry to give such a long answer, but I really am proud of the work we've done, and I'm proud of Jody. She's amazing. She's done amazing work. And if you want to check it out, it's interfaith-sanctuary.org. Interfaith-Sanctuary.org. You can see the great work they do, and maybe even, donate if you want to.
I think there's a song in there somewhere that you should be writing about your relationship with Jody, don't you?
Well, I've written some songs for Jody. I mean, when Jody and I got together, when we were both single and sort of discovered each other, we were being pretty quiet about it because, you don't, when you have a new relationship like that, especially after, after long marriages, you just sort of, you want to keep it to yourselves. But a friend heard about us being together, and she wrote an email to me. And at the end of it, she said, she was congratulating me. And then she said, "Hooray for love." And I thought, what a great title for a song. And so I wrote a song. I wrote the song "Hooray for Love," which is the title track of a record of mine a few records ago. And that's about her. That's about the beginnings of our relationship. I also wrote a song, which I haven't put on any records yet, called "You Are Welcome Here," that I wrote specifically for her, for the shelter to use. I wrote it with David Poe, who's someone I write with, and I've covered his songs. And it basically talks about, the chorus is, no matter who you love, no matter what they say, you are welcome here, you are welcome here. And that's one that'll maybe end up on my next record. Maybe it'll end up on these songs from my Kitchen album that is in the back of my head. You never know.
I was thinking you'd write a song called "Sanctuary" because you and Jody are each other's sanctuary.
Nice. All right. Well, that's when now you have the co-write on that. You get to be the co-writer.
You know what? If you write it, the satisfaction of knowing I planted an idea in your head will be compensation enough.
All right. I've got you on TV saying that. That's good.
Right. Well, Curtis, it's been wonderful having this opportunity to interview you. I've loved your music from the very beginning. I'm so grateful to you for taking the time to come on our show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for you obviously didn't have to do your homework because you've been listening a long time, but this is the most thorough interview I think I've ever had. I'm grateful for that.
It was a pleasure. I want to remind everyone that Curtis Stigers' new album, This Life, will be released on February 25th. For all the information about Curtis and his music and his tour dates, please visit curtisstigers.com. Curtis, thank you again so much for giving me this interview.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Our guest has been multi-platinum recording and concert artist Curtis Stigers. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.